Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind is the best coaster on Disney property. I know everyone's entitled to their own opinions, but like, be serious here. It's Guardians. It's always going to be Guardians for me. But I do think it's actually getting to the point where we should, have a discussion about updating some of the songs on this attraction. As much as I love the current playlist, like, this ride is too unique to, stay the same forever. So here's my ideas. So for starters, how long should the original songs last? So kind of looking at what Disney usually does with their updates to the parks and what they do, it seems like Disney usually plans on someone, visiting the resort once every 4 or 5 years. Kind of think about how they cycle around updates to their parks and all that. It just makes sense. So, say we take 5 years after Guardians opened, brings us to 2027, which is gross. 5 years is also just a nice round number when you think of how potentially long those initial, licensing contracts could be. I have no actual information on that, and I could not find any of it out there. But for the sake of this video, work with me. Also, once-in-a-lifetime guests really aren't impacted by, this soundtrack changing from time to time. They have much, much more important things to worry about when they're planning a once-in-a-lifetime trip to Disney. And, what song plays on Guardians out of a selection of, 6 is probably not the thing making or breaking their decision to visit the parks. But for Disney, those repeat customers that they're always trying to get back, changing around these songs, creates almost a feeling of a new attraction. It keeps this ride feeling fresh and people wanting to come back and spend money on lightning lanes, continue to try to get all the songs. And it, reinvigorates this attraction that they already have in their parks without a major upfront cost. So now that we're actually talking about replacing these songs, what kind of went into my decision-making process on this? Well, for starters, I'm trying to keep this somewhat realistic. So things that like licensing issues, explicit lyrics, or, something that was going to be too expensive for Disney to license on a ride where it's not themed to the band or the artist or the song itself, that I tried to stray away from. So, for example, I'm not going to put a Queen song on here, even though Queen would be an awesome fit, because it's going to cost a lot of money. And Disney's not going to see a return on investment in paying that much for Queen to just be an option on a roller coaster that already exists. Whereas, if they rethemed Rock and Roller Coaster to Queen, there's a direct return on investment because they're paying money for Queen's name to be really tied into that attraction. Now, do I think that's going to happen? Whole different story for a whole nother day. But that's kind of the thought process behind why some super popular songs are not going to get picked here. Another consideration was, what matches the currently existing ride system. So that's not changing. So, what songs, fit with the coaster elements that are already in? What songs, match lyrically, give space for dialogue to happen? It also kind of meant that I narrowed it down to still just 6 songs. And the final consideration was just, do these songs feel like they match the vibe of Guardians? Which, boils down to 80s songs. We're talking about songs from the 80s here. But to help me with this, I also kind of matched the songs to the songs that they replaced from the original soundtrack. That way I could kind of build more of a realistic, here's what Disney did on their first attempt, what kind of would replace each of these songs and give a similar energy and, fit that same mold that they've already created. Let's start with what's replacing Conga. So I wanted something that also had a really great start to the launch, a little bit less full production and just that overall happy, energetic vibe. And what I ended up going with was Walking on Sunshine by Katrina and the Waves. This song feels really comparable to Conga, and at the same time, it also, kind of avoids some of the more low-key verses that Conga does suffer from. It's also incredibly recognizable to people across generations. And Disney themselves has actually already licensed this before for Herbie Fully Loaded, back in 2006, I think. And so it's something they have a history with as well. Plus, I can't imagine anyone hitting the brake run hearing the song without a smile on their face, and I think that's what you want from a replacement for Conga. Next up, we have the replacement for Iran, which Iran is probably the most obscure song that Disney ended up going with for the original soundtrack. But I really love it. It, matches the energy lyrically really well. And then also, it almost gives off the energy of being in an action movie. It's probably the best way I can describe it. And so for a replacement for it, I went with another, one-hit wonder, at least in the US, with You Spin Me Round by Dead or Alive. I like that the song almost keeps the same kind of quirky vibes of I Ran, but it's a little bit more mainstream that more people would be, familiar with. And I mean, I just can't get over how well it would lyrically match the Omni Coaster system. After that is One Way or Another, and this one was kind of hard to, figure out a replacement for, because what I really like about One Way or Another is how it interprets lyrically the story of the ride a little bit different, and it's a very unique aspect to it that I really like. And at the same time, I also wanted to make sure I was retaining, a classic rock song in that same spot as well. Eventually, I settled on Any Way You Want It by Journey. First off, it's really crazy that Journey didn't get any representation on the original soundtrack. If there's any spot where I think Disney should spend a little bit of extra money to license a song, it's here. This is just a bona fide classic and would just be a perfect fit for this ride. Just imagining Steve Perry's layered vocals on that launch makes me really wish I had it now. Okay, so now it's time to replace my favorite song on the current soundtrack, which is Everybody Wants to Rule the World by Tears for Fear. And this is hard, because I love this song, and I love it for the ride, because it's kind of the oddball out there. But it works so well. It's a little bit slower pace, it's a little more chill, but it contrasts the actual ride system so well, and it just scratches an itch in my brain that the other songs don't do. And so if I had to replace it, I ended up going with Nothing's Gonna Stop Us Now. By Starship, not Mickey Minnie, sorry. This song I had to edit the most to, fit into the ride system itself, but I think it was worth it. It really does check all the boxes that Everybody Wants to Rule the World does. And just imagining that truck driver's gear change right as you get into that final chorus and you're going around the moon, I feel like that'd be a crowd favorite moment. Now for my least favorite, and the one I statistically get the most of the current soundtrack, Disco Inferno. Now, as much as it pains me to say this, I don't hate Disco Inferno. It's just far and away my least favorite of the current options. I think it has a weak launch. Its verses aren't very memorable, and they drag on so long compared to how short the chorus is, which is the part you want to hear a lot more. And it just doesn't feel as grand and spectacular as the other options. So, it was easier to replace this one. I was looking for something that stood out a bit more than Disco Inferno and solved some of the pitfalls that I personally have with it, while at the same time I wanted something that had a very recognizable chorus and was just an earworm. And I think that's what Disco Inferno does do well. And so, with that being said, I ended up going with Wake Me Up Before You Go Go by Wham! Now, I personally love this song, and I just think it has, all the danceability and recognizability that Disco Inferno does, and then some. And I think just that launch would be so much more impactful than Disco Inferno's kind of drum intro, and I think it would just be an overall improvement over Disco Inferno. Please stop giving me Disco Inferno. Statistically, I get it so much. It's a joke at this point, my friends. It's literally a joke, my friends. And now for probably the most iconic of the current offerings, September. And if you're gonna replace September on this ride, you better have the right song, because this was the most daunting one to figure out how to replace. I needed something that had another iconic launch. I needed something that was recognizable widely across generations, not just known, recognized, and well known. And also at the same time, you want something that keeps up that, feel good energy of the song and just is overall super danceable and super fun. And after a long time, only one song came to mind, and that was the YMCA by the Village People. So now that I've told you that, can you get that out of your head at this point? The idea of riding Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, doing the YMCA. I think it keeps the same brass section. It has the same iconic launch. It has everything you want from September, and also has arguably a more recognizable dance and is known even more widely across generations. I'm imagining people doing the YMCA in the Star Jumpers, and it seems so fun to me. It's probably a safety problem, I'm aware of that, but at the same time, it might be worth it. It honestly might be worth it. So now that we've updated the main soundtrack of Guardians of the Galaxy Cosmic Rewind, I want to talk about seasonal overlays. So for starters, Disney did try this once in 2022 during the Christmas season. They replaced all the songs with Run Run Rocket, which was a parody of Run Run Rudolph. It seems like guest reaction to this was lukewarm at best, because it did not return in 2023 and it does not sound like it's returning in 2024. But I really hope that the lukewarm reception at best doesn't dissuade Disney from doing seasonal overlays again. I think they're a great idea, I just think the execution the first time wasn't great. I think if you license 2 to 3 songs and really shorten that window to be right around the holiday itself, one, you keep this ride fresh, you give a little bit of a surprise and delight to guests visiting, but also you're really rewarding those people who are getting on this attraction and riding it during the holiday crowds. So let's start by going back to Christmas. Now, I'm aware of the elephant in the room. Disney does not have Mariah money for this ride. Especially for a seasonal overlay, I highly doubt Disney would put the money that Mariah Carey would be demanding into this attraction for just a seasonal overlay. I don't see it happening. As much as it would be a really good fit for the ride, I just think there's too many problems with that, and it wouldn't end up being, giving them any return on investment that they need. They're not worried about this drawing in new crowds because Christmas is the time of year where Disney needs less crowds, if anything. So with that out of the way, I think we can now get into what we all thought was going to be a part of a Guardians Christmas overlay, which is Last Christmas by Wham. This would be the ultimate slam dunk for a Christmas song on this ride. I think it's that perfect everybody wants to rule the world energy and just feels right off a Guardians soundtrack. If you're only going to give me one Christmas song, this is the one to give me. Another classic that would fit the ride system perfectly is Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree by Brenda Lee. I think it just lyrically fits really well with, the ride system, the Omni Coaster spinning around in space, and also just, it's such a recognizable Christmas song without being, the licensing nightmare that All I Want for Christmas Is You would be. The last Christmas song I had was Sleigh Ride by the Ronettes. I think this is a song that, contrasts the first 2 Christmas options without being distractingly different. But it really would get right into it with that launch. A little bit more upbeat, a little bit faster pace, and it just holds that energy through the entire song, which I think would really be a good fit for this ride. But why stop at Christmas? I feel like Halloween could have some really fun options too. The first one I thought of was Somebody's Watching Me by Rockwell. While it's not overtly Halloween, it really matches that kind of eerie, creepy vibe that you'd want for the season. And lyrically, it matches with the celestial kind of always being around you and trying to stop you with the Guardians. The real reason though that I put Halloween on here is the second option, Thriller by Michael Jackson. I know what I said about, licensing and costs, and I know Michael Jackson would cost a lot of money. However, Disney, the Jackson estate, and Michael Jackson have had a very long and well-known history with each other, and Disney has used that relationship to their advantage in the past, and Michael Jackson's been in the parks in the past. So I think that's what makes it somewhat realistic to have Thriller on Cosmic Rewind. Now, if they do go and do this, I think this may be the greatest song ever to be on Guardians, just for the launch alone. That launch would be incredible, and I'm mad that I can't experience it right now. There have been times that I've debated since piecing this of bringing headphones and starting Thriller by Michael Jackson when the launch hits so I can experience it for myself, even if everyone else around me is experiencing Disco Inferno. And then one other seasonal overlay that I thought could be really fun is if we ever end up getting, the Disney Channel night that Disneyland got over here and they put it at Epcot. Imagine riding Guardians to Hannah Montana or High School Musical or Camp Rock or Lemonade Mouth. I mean, that alone would make me buy the ticket. I was already going anyways for trailer, but that would be a very big plus to the event. Now, I do have one last thing as a wish for a refresh of the songs on Cosmic Rewind. And I think Disney has the opportunity to do one of the funniest things of all time here. I want there to be, anytime you ride the ride, an insanely low chance that instead of the song that's supposed to play, Never Gonna Give You Up by Rick Astley starts playing. I don't know how to describe how I think people would react to being rickrolled on Cosmic Rewind at an insanely low chance. I think it would be hilarious because, one, if you didn't tell anyone before you did it, imagine the reaction of explaining to people. They're like, oh, what song did you get? And you're like, Never Gonna Give You Up. And they're like, that's not an option, but you're being gaslit because it was an option the entire time. I think that would be hilarious. I also think the idea of, forcing locals to ride this ride over and over and over again and just spend that money on lightning lanes just for the chance of potentially getting rickrolled to say they got all the songs. It's so funny to me. I think it's hilarious. Just the entire thought process of there being like a 0.1% chance that this song plays. It just leans in and it feels Guardians. Plus, I tried the song with the ride. It works perfectly. It honestly would be one of the best song options you could get, which makes it infinitely funnier. And so if there's any takeaway from this video, I don't care if we don't replace the songs, we don't do any seasonal overlays. Give me the chance of getting rickrolled on this ride. This is the Trojan horse of this video. I don't care about anything else. I want to get rickrolled on Guardians. I hope you like this video. I'm trying to get out a couple more of these, a little bit more narrow focus or smaller concept videos out in the meantime, as I'm working on a much larger project that's probably going to take a couple of months. And so I want to keep some entertainment out there for you guys. And so yeah, I also want to thank my friends for dealing with me trying way too many songs in a Premiere template with a POV of the ride in it. We were just kind of throwing spaghetti at the wall together for a lot, so a lot of this list is shaped by them, and I appreciate them dealing with me dearly. So let me know in the comments if you agree with the songs I chose, or if you have a dream song yourself that you'd love to hear on Cosmic Rewind. Love to hear it. And so yeah, thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video. And I promise eventually I will make a Disney related video that is not focused on Epcot.
I see. It is meaningless. Well then welcome to the Guardians of the Galaxy.
And ride horizons.